Woodstock Music Festival occurred. And I was actually one of the kids who attended that festival. Yeah, I remember it was the Woodstock Music and Art Fair or something. And there were supposed to be different events over the course of the 3 days and nights. Now, I actually had tickets to the festival. I wish I had them today. Probably worth quite a lot of money. But, of course, the tickets became irrelevant at the actual event because the fences were kicked down. I remember that. My buddy and I were amongst the first to arrive. We both of us were actually acquainted with the town of Woodstock because I don't know if I've conveyed this sentiment, but growing up in the Throgs Neck housing projects wasn't exactly paradise, although it was rich, I suppose, in many respects. Compared to some childhoods, I suppose. I actually ran away from home when I was 14 because there was this older fellow who also lived in the projects who had done a stint in what we called reform school. And in reform school, apparently, they had nurtured his musical abilities, and he used to play the guitar and the drums and the clarinet. He was quite a talented guy. And he was something of a father figure to me, since I'd never actually met my own father. He would tell me about his all the exciting things that were going on in this country town. Well, I'd never been to the country. I mean, for me, what was the country? It was something I'd seen in movies, and I don't think I would see a lot of live chickens in the Bronx. I remember when I was visiting my grandmother who lived on Valentine Avenue near Poe Park. Wow, that's a memory. I used to actually play in Poe's cottage as a child. There was compared to what we have today, all the surveillance cameras everywhere. There was virtually no security back then. And my grandmother lived near the Grand Concourse, my Russian Jewish grandmother, and my mother would send me there now and then, and I was very grateful to get away from the projects. And she lived right near Poe Park, in the actual cottage where he wrote Annabelle Lee, the famous lyric. And usually there was some kind of guard around, but he or she was always nodding off, and you could just go into the house and explore, and it was fascinating. So I wound up going with my friend to the Woodstock Festival. As I said, we were already familiar with the town and with the people. We would play music there. I got my first experience of really performing in one of the cafes. I remember it was on Rock City Road, and was it the Elephant Cafe? I think they called it the Elephant Cafe. And my mother sent the police after me, but the damage had already been done. I mean, before they got to me, I had enough adventures to know that I was born for that kind of life, I guess. My undoing, no doubt. Anyway, my buddy and I decided we would go to this festival, and we didn't have cars, and even if we did, we were too young to drive. I was like 15. He was 9 months my junior. So so I grabbed my guitar, and he got his knapsack, And we hitchhiked up to Bethel, New York, and had quite an adventure. That was really, really something. Back then, I should say that hitchhiking was more or less safe. It wasn't like it, like today, where people are always looking over their shoulder. It was a bit more relaxed. So we managed to hitchhike up there uh, with a bunch of. I remember getting a ride with these people from the village, and they kind of shocked us by their appearance uh, and their manner of speech, to put it mildly. Anyway, when we got there the day before the festival actually started, and I remember seeing one of the first things I remember is seeing the famous bus, Ken Kesey's famous bus, with the word "further" on the marquee, on it, and it was painted in wild psychedelic colors, and it was parked just off the side of the road on on the hillside there, or rather on a knoll, and we found a place to sleep. We had our sleeping bags, and I remember even writing a song there. It was all so exciting, and but it was already the rain was it was already overcast, and we were wondering if it was going to rain. Well, it certainly did rain. It rained a lot. I managed to survive for 2 days. My friend was a bit more robust, so I didn't actually see the end where Jimi Hendrix played the Star Spangled Banner. But I do remember a lot, especially when we woke up early to get our seats. We wanted a good seat, and we walked in. No one was taking tickets, and we sat right as close to the stage as we could, and it was very sunny that morning, I remember. And on our way to the stage, we ran into John Sebastian of the Love and Spoonful. He just walked right past us, as large as life. Wow, we'd never met any stars. I mean, this was a really big deal. And he was smiling, as he always smiled when he performed, and he was wearing his glasses, his wire-rimmed glasses, and he had a tie-dyed shirt, and just walked past us, as if it's the most normal thing. I was, wow, this is really something. And we were still a bit tired. We hadn't slept much, actually, overnight. I guess we were too excited, so we figured we would just, put our blankets down and snooze a bit, and that's what we did. Well, my friend was still sleeping when I woke up about 4 or 5 hours later and looked around and suddenly saw the largest gathering of humanity that I'd ever seen in my life. And this was only on the first day. Concert hadn't even started yet. And so I woke my friend up and I said, "Hey, look at this." And he looked around. Oh my God. And we realized something was up. A lot of people had heard about this event, and we started to feel, very thrilled. We were hungry, and they had set up tents way, way at the top of the hill, and they were supposed to be for arts and crafts events, learning to do beading and pottery or whatever. And so we decided to visit those places and keep our place, but walk around a bit. And also there was food. The people were handing out food, so we had something to eat. And then we came back, and I remember very clearly, Richie Havens coming on stage, and beginning the concert with those words, freedom, freedom, just strumming away. Now, I had actually met Richie Havens because this Reform School musician knew everybody in Woodstock, and I'd actually run into him, and I'd been introduced to him. And I remember he was a really tall guy, and even back then he was like wearing the dashiki and looked very impressive. Had a beautiful voice, low voice, and very, very nice guy indeed. And so there he was up on stage, and as I said, I managed to stay. Each day was divided up. There was supposed to be like folk acts on the first day, and then there was rock and something. I forget exactly, how it was divided. But who was playing there? One of the draws for me was that same band, the Incredible String Band, was a featured act. And I remember being very excited by seeing them, come on stage and play. And they weren't given much time, but they sang one of their longer songs. They had songs that would last 15, 20 minutes, and they were something of a cult item. The Incredible String Band. They never really got the fame that they deserved, in my opinion. But people who liked them, would go to every concert the way that the Deadheads would follow their band around. And I remember that they sang a song called "When," I think it was "When You Find Out Who You Are," and it's one of those longer songs. And for me, that was one of the highlights. Although I would have liked them to have been given more time. But what really stands out in my memory, as far as the music goes, at Woodstock was the night performances, where Arlo Guthrie came on and delivered one of his long, funny monologues about various topics, which always came back to drugs, it seemed. And he asked everybody, and at that time, it was unique. He asked everybody to light a match, or and everybody did, and then you saw, all those little tiny points of light around us, and it was a beautiful moment. And he was great. He performed beautifully, and then for me, the absolute highest moment came when Joan Baez came on to do her set. Now, of course, Joan Baez was known for her association with Bob Dylan, with the social justice movement, with Cesar Chavez and all those people. Oh, well, I was already an incipient lefty at that time, naturally. And though my political views and religious views were to undergo considerable change through the course of the years. But at that time, I was very much in sympathy, with the lower classes and all that. And she naturally did some protest songs, but what really moved me and remains unforgettable for me to this day was a song she had written. And she had written it for her sister, Mimi Fariña, and her beautiful sister, who had lost her husband, Richard Fariña, when he was killed in a motorcycle accident at the age of 30, to whom was dedicated Thomas Pynchon's great novel, Gravity's Rainbow. They knew each other. Anyway, she had written a song called Sweet Sir Galahad about her sister's sadness, her inability to come out of her mourning over her husband. And she sang that song, accompanied by her guitar. And it wasn't, what struck me is that it wasn't a protest song. It had nothing to do with social justice. It was about another's suffering and how the power of love ultimately is the only healing force in the universe to which we should really pay any serious attention. And it was so moving to me. It was such a bright light, you know? And I had been living in such squalor from the point of view of, you know, family and money and all that back in the projects, you know? And it meant so much to me that to this day, I remember it and am charged by that performance. And lately I've been thinking about it all. I've been thinking about her and how we've so messed things up in the wake of the 60s. And I've been working on a book of many of these reminiscences, which I've in some part fictionalized, trying to find proper literary form to archive what experiences I've had coming out of that milieu.
Subconsciously, we all understand on what I call the edge of consciousness. But these programs, these episodes are to entertain, to make us aware of how easy it is for us to enjoy what is a mysterious, very misunderstood activity, creative energy. I feel it is what connects us all here on the edge of consciousness.
I'd survived for the longest time on my wits, I guess, not having been able to finish college. But when I was about 30, I learned I could make a pretty good living as an editor of legal copy, and I started working in law firms and financial firms as a temp. I had actually been teaching in community colleges before that and making quite a pittance. But eventually I established myself as an editor and as a ghostwriter. And in my late 30s, I landed a job in the World Trade Center with a fairly large mutual funds corporation. And I actually arrived in 1993, a week after the first attack on the World Trade Center, in which about 7 people were killed. And I remember that there was a smell, you know, an odor of smoke lingering in the building a week after. And I wound up staying in that job until till 9/11, till the day the buildings came crashing down. And I'd been there from 1993. You know, I was going on my 8th year, and I was in that year I was having some trouble with a manager of mine, and she was giving me some grief. And I'd never actually taken a vacation during all those years. I was a very faithful employee, and I wasn't making very much. Still, I wanted to show them that I was, a good employee, etc. And because that manager was really giving me, hell, I decided at last to go on a vacation. So I went to Scandinavia for about 3 weeks, had a great time. And then I came back, and I was supposed to go back, actually, on 9/11. We worked up on the 33rd floor, Tower 1. And there was a little church I used to go to I'm Greek Orthodox Christian, and there was a little Greek church whose roof we could see from my office. And every Wednesday, the church was open to the public. And it was a really lovely little place. The priest would play recorded music. It had a very meditative atmosphere. He would play Greek chant. And people would come in and light a candle and sit for a few minutes during their lunch hour. He'd keep the door open. It was a very loving little space. He'd been asked many times over the years to sell that little church. It belonged to his family, that property, because they wanted to build a parking lot or something to expand the parking lot. He kept the church, which I thought was a very nice thing to do. And had very fond memories of that church, that little church. And so I was supposed to come back to my job, to my annoying boss on 9/11. But when I got back, I remember that day was so beautiful. There was something in the air. The sky was so beautifully blue. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. There was just something in there. It was just this perfectly beautiful day. And I was again a bit euphoric in the wake of my vacation, you know. So I remembered there was going to be a church service that morning in a Russian church on 93rd Street uptown. I said, you know what? I'll put it off one more day. They're not going to miss me. It's like, and so I wound up going to church that morning. And I remember it was the feast of the beheading of Saint John the Baptist. And when the service was over, I don't know, that must have been like 9:15, around there, between 9 and 9:30. A priest came in, and he said, "Oh, you won't believe what happened. The antenna on top of the World Trade Center has been destroyed." That's what he said. That's the news report he had gotten. I said, "Oh, really?" And then there was a woman from that parish, small woman, dark features, whose face I vaguely recognized. I'd seen her about on Passant. She passed through, and she came running up to me hysterically, and she said, "You have to help me. You have to help me." I said, "What's going on?" "You can't believe what's happened. They've attacked us. They've attacked us. My husband is away. My husband is away, and my child is in daycare, and he's on the other side of the city. You've got to help me to find my child. My husband is away. Please help me. Will you help me?" I said, yes, of course. And she said, "Okay, I have to go upstairs. We have to get the stroller." She had a heavy accent. She was a woman from Georgia, not the southern state, but from the Soviet republics. And she brought me upstairs. She put on the television, and the news was on, and you could see the smoke, coming from the buildings. What do they want from us? What if they want from? Why are they doing this? She was a very well-educated woman. I remember she was a chemist, and she was totally in hysteria. And I just tried to calm her down, and then we got the stroller and we went downstairs, and of course, all the subways were closed, and we walked through the streets downtown. The daycare center was near Lincoln Center, so we were walking from 93rd Street on the Fifth, near Fifth Avenue, and we had to walk with thousands of other people toward our destination. And I remember the feeling of eeriness of not knowing what was going on, and especially the quiet in the skies. There were no airplanes. And so I just did my best to calm her down. She was just, of course, very nervous about her child. I assured her everything would be okay. We finally reached our destination, and we got her child. and she relaxed, and she thanked me, and then I had to walk home, after that. In retrospect, I don't know. I don't know what brought me into that church rather than to go back to work where I was supposed to be. But of course, that was a day that changed many people's